Now, yesterday we got some news we'd been expecting for a little while, and that was confirmation that the T20 World Cup in the autumn was going to be moved to the Middle East. What do we know?
Yeah, pretty open secret really. Once the IPL was postponed in May, that the T20 World Cup, the men's T20 World Cup that was due to take place in India in October and November this year, was to be moved. Now, we knew that the ICC had the backup plan of moving the competition to the United Arab Emirates. We also knew that the rescheduled Indian Premier League was going to take place in the UAE, just as it did last year. And once that competition, once the IPL, the conclusion to that tournament was moved to the UAE to take place between September and October, it logically followed that the T20 World Cup was also going to take place there as well. We say it's in the UAE because Oman will also be used. The ground in Muscat will be used for the men's T20 World Cup. Now, there may be slight concern, I guess, that a relatively few number of grounds, there's only grounds in Sharjah, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, can take the amount of cricket that's going to take place in the end of the IPL. There's about half of that tournament remaining, and then an entire men's T20 World Cup. How they're going to split it is the first part of the men's T20 World Cup, which is a preliminary part involving 8 teams with 4 advancing to the second phase. That will be held in one of the nations of the UAE, one of Sharjah, Abu Dhabi or Dubai and Oman. So some of those grounds get a little bit of a rest, and then they can be used for the second part of the men's T20 World Cup. The problem is fitting everything in. There's still half an IPL to be completed, about 30 matches, and that means that the IPL final, which is yet to be confirmed, will probably take place around about October the 14th, and then the T20 World Cup will begin on October the 17th. That's a lot of cricket in a short space of time. That's a lot of preparations that are disrupted. You could say, well, a lot of cricketers will be there playing T20 cricket anyway. They'll be in the groove, but it's not ideal.
And we should say that the options are limited. You know, there is not that much that can be done. I completely understand the COVID situation in India has made that the possibility of staging the tournament there impossible. BCCI Secretary Jay Shah said yesterday the BCCI made every effort to stage the T20 World Cup in India and provide its passionate fans with a reason to cheer after a long period of gloom. However, the prevailing pandemic situation in the country meant that the health and safety of everyone concerned was fraught with risk should a tournament of this stature be held across the country. The BCCI will continue to host the tournament, which will now be held in the UAE and Oman, and work closely with the ICC to make it a memorable event. So that is worth bearing in mind. It is still the BCCI that is hosting the tournament. If we look back to how the T20s in the Indian Premier League that were played in the UAE played out last year, loads of high scores initially, and as the tournament went on, lower and slower and tougher to bat on. If we've got half an IPL, then a preliminary warm-up tournament, then the main T20 World Cup, and no fault of their own, but how are those ground curators going to keep the surfaces good?
I mean, it's a really good question, and it also you wonder how that will affect the cricketers played, and therefore which sides that will favour. You would expect the subcontinental teams who are used to playing on the slower, lower turning pitches would come into their own as the tournament progresses. Don't forget, though, that England reached the final of the last men's T20 World Cup, which was played in India all the way back in 2016. Of course, you've got the issue of cricket piling up. A lot of England players would have, or did take part in that first part of the Indian Premier League. We're now not sure they're going to be there for the rescheduled tournament. England are due to be touring Pakistan and Bangladesh as part of their preparations for the T20 World Cup. We already know that Ashley Giles says he expects those England players to be available for those tours. Joss Butler himself has said he'll be wherever Ashley Giles tells him to be. England won't be the only team that are going to be hit by scheduling congestion. India's men's team are here for a 5-test series that doesn't end until the middle of September. Both of those teams will go off and do what they've got to do before the T20 World Cup. Straight after the T20 World Cup, we're into the Ashes. There's going to be a 2-week or a 3-week break between the T20 World Cup and the Ashes. England then go off to the West Indies after Christmas. It really is wall-to-wall cricket for India, and for England rather, and a lot of men's international teams between now and really Christmas 2022. And that all kicks off again, really, for the England men's team with, well, starting tomorrow, with those series against Sri Lanka, then they play Pakistan, then 5 test matches against India. They really don't get a break now for a long, long time. So a lot of cricket in that autumn and winter period for England to look forward to and get through.